Welcome to Cinema Bites, your go-to for movie recaps in a flash. Big twists, epic moments, all in just minutes. The movie damage begins with John, and the guard takes him out of his cell to complete his release procedures from prison, and we learn that he entered prison on a second-degree involuntary manslaughter charge and was sentenced to 7 years, and he's getting out after serving half the sentence for good behavior. John goes to sign his release papers and receives his personal belongings, and before he leaves they ask him if he regrets killing Masio. He affirms that he feels guilty and that not a day has passed without him thinking of Masio. They ask him how he will spend his time outside prison, and he tells them he'll look for a job and stay away from trouble. John leaves through the prison gate, hardly believing it, gets on a bus, and starts looking for work until he finds some. He works as a laborer in a building under construction. At night he goes to hang out in a bar, and while he's sitting there he sees a group of guys harassing the waitress, Frankie. When one of them tries to force himself on her, John snaps, beats him up, and throws him out. The owner of the place is impressed and offers him a job, and, of course, he agrees. So he works at night in the bar and in the morning at the construction site, spending every day working, away from people and trouble. After that, he goes to the precinct to submit his weekly report after his release. The officer asks him what he has done since getting out, and he tells him he has 2 jobs and is trying as much as possible to stay out of trouble, especially with his boss who keeps hassling him and stealing from his pay. The officer signs the report and says, "See you next week." We then see 2 customers fighting in the bar. John tries to calm them down, and when they refuse, he beats them and throws them out. A man named Ren is there, is very impressed by John's fighting moves, and offers him a job. But John refuses and leaves. Here we learn that Frankie and Ren are close friends. The next day, John finishes work at the site, and as he's leaving he finds Veronica, Masio's wife, waiting for him. He takes her and they talk in a restaurant. Through their conversation we learn that John sent her many letters asking for forgiveness, and that his release depended on her word. She decided to forgive him and testified to that in court, and based on her statement he was released halfway through for good behavior. Veronica tells him she didn't do it so he could thank her. She asks him to help her and save her daughter from dying. She tells him her 8-year-old daughter Sarah is very ill and needs a heart transplant. She says she sent letters to all the donation organizations in the country, but no one replied. John apologizes for killing her husband, but she shocks him, saying she doesn't want to hear that. She needs $250,000 for the operation to save her daughter. John tries to explain he doesn't have the money, but Veronica gets angry and tells him to figure it out. Before she leaves, she tells him he's obliged to help her, because if her husband were alive, she wouldn't need John. She gives him her phone number and address and leaves. John feels trapped and doesn't know what to do. He goes home, counts the money he has, and hides it behind the air conditioner so no one will steal it. At night, he goes to the bar, and after he finishes his shift, Frankie gives him his share of the tips. He asks about Ren and asks her to tell him where to find him. Ren is gambling and, as usual, losing. Frankie and John go to him, and John asks about the kind of job he was offered. Ren takes him to show him the work, an underground fight club with very large bets. John watches 2 fighters battling brutally. Survival is for the strongest, and the winner finishes off the other. John refuses the job and accuses Ren of being afraid. Ren tells him he can make a lot of money if he can beat the fighter in the ring. Frankie tells him he'd earn $6,000 per fight, but John insists on refusing. Before he leaves, Ren says he knows John's story and that he just got out of prison. John gets angry and says, "If you think you can scare me, you're wrong," and leaves. John then goes to Veronica's house and tries to explain he can't get the money, but she gets angry and throws at him the letters he sent from prison asking for forgiveness. While they're talking, her daughter comes out, and when John sees her, he feels guilty and asks Veronica to give him some time to come up with the money. The next day, Ren and Frankie go to a man named Prime, who owns a betting shop. Ren tells him about John and insists he's a one-of-a-kind fighter. He asks for an amount he can use to bet on the fight, but Prime refuses and offers to lend against Ren's father's metal buttons for a certain amount. From the conversation we learn Ren owes many people, and they all want to tear him apart. Ren refuses because the buttons are a keepsake from his father, and leaves. Meanwhile, John's boss picks a fight with him and fires him. As he's throwing John out, the boss has a heart attack and collapses. John tries to save him, performs first aid, and tells his co-workers to call an ambulance. The ambulance arrives, and they thank John for saving his boss at the last moment. But unfortunately, John still loses his job. At night, John goes with Frankie and Ren to the fight club to watch the fighter Ren has bet on. The fighter is badly injured in the first round, so they pull him out. Frankie stitches his wound and gives first aid. Ren tries to encourage him, saying he can beat his opponent, but the fighter collapses and loses consciousness. The organizer comes in and says they have 5 minutes before he declares the opponent the winner, and Ren loses his money. John decides to fight in his place. Ren tells him if he loses, he won't get paid. The organizer refuses to switch fighters, but Ren bribes him to let it slide. Trini, the opposing fighter's manager, gets angry, demands the money Ren owes, and Ren offers a deal. Agree to the fight, and he'll pay after John takes out his fighter. Trini agrees, and the organizer tells them to get ready. John asks what they know about the opponent. Frankie says he's a coward who wins by biting his opponent because of his huge fangs. And Ren advises John to avoid the teeth, assuring him he can win. Before the fight, the organizer explains it continues until one submits, and that entering with weapons is forbidden but weapons are allowed during the fight. John doesn't understand, so the organizer clarifies. During the fight they throw in weapons except firearms. Whoever uses them best wins. The fight begins. John tries to avoid the opponent's strikes and those terrifying teeth, but the opponent lunges, bites John's arm and knocks him down. John gets furious and starts hitting him. As the fight intensifies, the organizer throws in batons. They start hitting each other with iron bars, but John manages to control the fight, attacks his opponent, and beats him until he surrenders. Reno and Frankie are very happy and leave the ring in high spirits. They go to the locker room and Frankie starts treating his wounds. When John gets his share, he splits it with the fighter who replaced him, which surprises Reno, and he accuses him of being crazy because no one does that. Frankie is very impressed and becomes sure he has a conscience. The next day, John goes to file his weekly report at the police station. Even though he tells the officer about his participation in the fights, the officer pretends not to hear and tells him to come back the following week. After that, he goes to train, and when he returns home, he's shocked to find the door open. Inside, he's stunned to see Reno and Frankie there, and they know where his money is. Reno tells him they must enter a Timmons fight because they'll get a bag full of money from it, and he tells him to pack to go live with them. They go to meet the organizer of the fights, and Reno asks him to set up fights for them. He confirms that John is a formidable fighter and that he'll make a lot of money off him, but he refuses Reno's offer. John asks him to leave them alone for a bit. Frankie takes him outside, and John manages to convince him. When they leave, Reno is very upset, and they try to calm him down. John learns that the locals love fights and fanatical fighters, but his calm style won't work with them. Reno then pawns his father's cufflinks and gets $5,000 to pay the fight bet. They go to a place where fights are held, and John is shocked to see dogs around the fighters. He learns that whoever the dogs catch is the loser, and of course the dogs eat him because they're hungry. Reno leaves them and goes to arrange the fight. John asks Frankie about her relationship with Reno and why she's with him. She tells him Reno saved her from death and she owes him her life. Reno goes to talk to Nestor, a gang leader. Nestor asks about the money Reno owes him. When he learns Reno doesn't have it, he orders his 2 henchmen to teach him a lesson. They restrain Reno before he can move. John steps in and offers Nestor to fight one of his men in exchange for the debt Reno owes. Nestor agrees, and one of his men steps up. John fights with strength and skill, keeps hitting him until he wins. Reno is happy, and Nestor is furious for losing his money. They leave happy because they won $70,000. On the way, Veronica calls John to tell him her daughter is sick and has been taken to the hospital. John goes to check on her and assures her he's raising money for the surgery, but Veronica has lost hope and falls into depression. Frankie is upset by the deadly fights Reno is arranging, and Reno notices she likes John and is worried about him. He tells her he did 4 years in prison for killing someone with his powerful hands and says they need John, asking her to trust him. John walks in, and they realize he overheard them, which upsets them. The next day, they go to a new fight. Frankie preps John, and Reno tries to explain his point of view, but John refuses to listen. Before he goes out, Frankie asks him to take care of himself. The fight starts, and John wins as usual. From then on, he enters fights in different places against merciless fighters, but he beats them all and his name spreads everywhere. Reno collects $45,000, but he still needs the remaining $100,000 to enter the tennis fight. He talks to some men, then gets a call and steps out to answer it. Frankie uses the chance to apologize for what John overheard. John tells her that when he went to prison, he tried every way to control his anger. Reno returns and tells them there's a new fight. The next day, John goes to a certain restaurant for breakfast and sees a car with a group of people looking at him before they drive off. That night, those same men go to Reno. They're men of someone named Val, and they demand the money Reno owes. When he says he doesn't have it, they beat him and give him a week to pay. Their leader warns that if the week passes without payment, they'll kill him. The next day, they go to a fight at Nestor's again. Frankie is angry, and Reno says, "How else will I pay what I owe?" Nestor puts one of his henchmen in to fight. Before the fight, Reno tells John to look for any weakness in the opponent to beat him. The fight begins. The opponent is very strong. After a long, brutal fight, John takes control and attacks, hitting him with all his strength until he finishes him off. They go to a bar, and John notices the owner is upset with him. John then gets a call and is shocked to learn Veronica has attempted suicide. He rushes to her home and finds her on the floor, covered in blood. He carries her to the hospital. Frankie finds a hospital paper on the ground. While they wait for Veronica to regain consciousness, John tells Frankie about Sarah's illness and his struggle to cover the surgery cost. That's why he's in the fights. He notices scars on Veronica's wrist from multiple attempts. Veronica wakes and asks why he saved her. He tells her not to give up and assures her he'll save her daughter. The next day, Reno goes to the pawn shop to get his father's cufflinks back, but is shocked to learn they were sold overnight. Zahn and Frankie return home, and Reno tells them Nestor called and set a new fight to avenge his man. The opponent will be the dead fighter's brother. He asks if he should accept. John tells him to set the date. The next day, John files his weekly report as usual, then goes to the venue to fight Nestor's man. Val's men show up at Reno's side of the arena and ask if he has their money. He tells them he wagered it on the fight and assures them Zahn is a beast in the ring and he'll pay after they win. Frankie is shocked to see Val's men. Reno asks her to take his car and leave fast. When she refuses, he begs her to trust him. She realizes he's entangled with them and leaves. John overhears but doesn't understand. The fight starts. John fights with all his skill. After he overwhelms his opponent, the crowd chants for him to kill, but he refuses to make the same mistake again and withdraws from the fight. Everyone is stunned, especially Reno. Val's men get angry and attack Reno, beating him. Frankie rushes to him. John takes them and they leave. On the way, John learns he owes $1,500,000. Frankie speaks up and tells him that was her debt to protect her and help her. Al Assel and Reno decide to pay it. After that, John goes to visit Sarah in the hospital, and while he's sitting in a restaurant, he finds Val's men waiting for him with a car. He gets in with them and goes to meet their boss, Val. Here we learn that Val is the owner of the building where John used to work, and the person who saved him from death is his daughter's husband. He tells John that John owes him and that he's ready to grant him any request. John tells him about Sarah's surgery and that he'd been fighting in underground betting matches to raise the surgery money, but he was getting small amounts from those fights and was hoping to enter a main event to win the big amount. He asks Val to pay the fight's bet for him and assures him this will be his last fight. Val calls his man and asks his opinion on John's fight, and he's shocked to learn that if John hadn't withdrawn from the fight, the money Reno owed would have come back to him. Val gives John a choice between paying the fight's bet or paying Reno's debt, and John chooses the fight. They let him go and leave. After that, John takes Veronica home, and she tells him she forgives him because she's sure he didn't mean to kill her husband. Then Reno goes to thank John after learning that Val cleared his debt, and he confesses his love for Frankie. He tells John he's his only friend and thanks him for being in his life. At that moment, Reno gets a call and is surprised to hear that someone paid the fight bet. They go to the fight venue. John enters the ring, which is made of wires, and a very huge fighter steps in against him. The fight begins, and the opponent charges at John, hitting him with full force. John notices how strong he is and starts hitting back until the ring breaks and they fall underground. They continue fighting, and the opponent unhooks a chain tied to a bundle of pipes and drops them on John. John falls into the sewers, and the fighter thinks he killed him and declares victory, but John surprises everyone, climbs back out, and attacks him, beating him with all his strength until he knocks him to the ground. The fighters announce a withdrawal, so John wins the match. Reno and Frankie are overjoyed. After that, John goes to pay for the surgery, and Veronica thanks him for helping her. Frankie and Reno then pick him up from the hospital. John gives Reno his father's cufflinks, and Reno is surprised to learn John bought them for him. He thanks him, and they decide to continue their path together. And with that, today's movie events come to an end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next summary.